Definitely. Um, the one biggest thing actually was, we were there to study the melt, the start of the melt into summer. And interestingly, this year was a weird year for the Arctic, especially this particular region. The melt actually happened a few weeks late. So there's this thing called the melt onset where the surface will actually hit about 32 degrees and kind of hover around that. And that's why some of the surface and the sea ice starts to melt into these ponds. But that actually normally happens in mid to late May, and it didn't happen until right before we left in mid-June. So that was a little unusual. We still got some very cool data and observations, but we were there to study that transition period, and we got the beginning of it, but not necessarily as much as we wanted to. And then these warm storms that I was talking about, this time of year, normally there's quite a few of them that can make their way up into the Arctic, but we actually only really had one good one. um, Mother Nature does her thing, and you can't predict it, but so we worked around that. I mean, that was kind of the unexpected part of it, but we still were really excited to see some of the changes that were happening in the water and in the air. They weren't exactly what we expected, but it was still really, really interesting and really cool to see. If you look at the history of time of the sea ice, it's the melt is starting to happen earlier and earlier and earlier. And so we wanted to go out to see the changes in the air, the ocean, the ice, and how those things are changing as they start to get shifting to an earlier date within the year. So, I mean, and there's just not a lot of observations in this region relative to other places. I mean, it's hard to get to. You have to have a ship. So we're trying to fill these gaps in observations, especially during this time of year, because what happens with a lot of ship studies in the Arctic is they go out either later in the summer or sometimes in the midsummer, but it's really rare to have a ship go out this time of year because of the challenging sea ice conditions. And we definitely saw that. It was challenging. The ice was thicker than we expected too. So we tried to keep heading north, and this icebreaker can only break through ice so fast. And so that was a challenge. And so we're just trying to fill these observational gaps throughout the annual record of the Arctic. And that was basically the big goal for this study. I'd have to say primarily I'm a big nature person, and I really love how beautiful the Arctic is. Of course, I didn't know that at first going up there, but I remember when I started getting into climate research and going to graduate school and figuring out kind of what did I want to do for my job. I realized and learned that the Arctic and Antarctic regions are really delicate, and they're really changing quickly due to climate. So there's all these effects that happen in the Arctic and the Antarctic, but especially the Arctic, where it's warming much faster than the rest of the planet. And we don't have a lot of observations up there to really fully understand how that is changing the Arctic system and how that's affecting weather and climate, not just in the Arctic, but also how that might be affecting weather and climate where we all live. So the fact that it's really a sensitive location, we don't know a lot about it, and it's a very beautiful location and really pristine. Kind of those main reasons made me want to focus my research in this particular region on the globe.